Great. So I think we can get started. So my name is Roxana Martinez. I'm the admissions counselor at Southwestern Law School. And we're just so happy to have you here today. There's currently 72 people with us. We're very happy about that. And for the most part, Maggie or Margaret Hall will be giving the presentation today. Please remember to raise your hand if you have any questions. And feel free to use the chat. If you do have questions, you can ask them there as well, and then we'll answer them throughout the event.
Hey, everybody. So I am the Associate Director of the Library at Southwestern, and I also do a lot of teaching. I'm one of the reference librarians as well. So I do a lot of teaching. I teach first-year students their legal research, so the beginning. And then I also teach the upper level classes, such as advanced legal research and practical legal research. But then I'll also go into seminar classes and teach specialized seminar classes, the research so that they can write their papers. So I've been doing it for about 15 years. I've been at the University of Minnesota. I've been at the University of North Carolina, and then I came out here to the West Coast. So it is one of my favorite things to do is to teach you legal research because, frankly, it is what you do most often. We are no longer in the days when everybody has a ton of paralegals to help them. And frankly, as new associates, it is one of the things you're asked to do most often is to research a subject that a more seasoned attorney then is going to rely on your information. So I really enjoy teaching legal research. We have a couple major databases that are not Google. And so legal research is really one of the important fundamental skill sets that you can have. And everybody has to take it. So I have a captive audience. Now, do we still use books? We're doing this over Zoom. I'm only going to show you 2 out of the multitude of databases that we use on a regular basis. But we do still use books, especially in an academic atmosphere. So if you haven't had a chance to sort of look around at the pictures of the Southwestern Library, it is truly one of the most beautiful libraries. And it's not just my opinion. It's actually in magazine articles and other things. It's truly a beautiful library. And people come in, and behind Roxanne is one of our second floor shelves pictures. And people say, do you still use all these books? And I have to tell you that yes, we still use books. However, we don't use them as much anymore as we use databases to get through things. So what do we do in a legal research class normally? We normally meet with you multiple times. There's always a lecture component where we teach you about sometimes the basic things. You might not remember 9th grade civics much. So we sometimes start with there's 3 branches of government, and each branch of government has its own law that you might have to intermingle them. There might be case law, statutes, regulations, and they all work together to answer one question. So sometimes we start off as basic as what are these things? Who runs what area of law? And then we also move on to much harder things, transactional. We move on to forms that you can use. Remember, not everything's on the internet. If people could get their legal questions answered by Google or just pulling a form off the internet, then they wouldn't need to hire lawyers. So it really is you utilizing those things, learning how to use them and interpreting them and figuring out what's best for your client's specific question that is what makes you a lawyer. And so just remember that. If your first inclination is to go to Google, then just think, why would somebody be paying me hundreds of dollars an hour to Google for them? And that is why we need to learn legal research and why we need to utilize the specialized databases that, frankly, makes it hard for the regular person in America to do their own legal research. It actually makes it very difficult. Many public libraries can't afford these databases. The books are harder to use. And so more and more people do need to rely on a lawyer who has access to these items. LA County is actually pretty lucky. They have an amazing county law library, but it's hard to get to find out about. So that's one of the things that we feel is a core skill. It is your human brain though that does it. So one of the things when we're doing a class is we do a little bit of a lecture about something. And I'm not going to do that today because I don't want to focus in on just case law or just statutes or just regulations. I want you to see more of what a mock class, the majority of the mock class would be, which is more of us doing things on these databases and having a scenario placed in front of you. So I'm going to give you a little scenario. I'm going to make you all in-house counsel for American Golf. Does anybody like golf? Do you all like to golf? Go to a golf course? They're just reopening them. So it's one of those things that if you're in-house counsel, you never know what kind of question you're going to get. And you have a captive audience. You have a very specific client that you're working for. So in this scenario, American Golf has purchased, they have 60 different places in California alone. They have purchased an adjoining piece of property next to one of their LA golf courses. And they're very excited about this fact that they have picked up this piece of property because it's going to allow them to redesign their back 9 holes. And they are going to hire a master golfer that is going to redesign those last 9 holes. It's going to be a great marketing event. And so they have been very excited that finally they were able to purchase this property. Now, this property was originally owned by a great horticulturist. So the other benefit of it is that it is a pristine land. And they really like that they will be able to utilize what he did with his property and put in the golf course to redesign what those last holes look like. So they've spent a lot of money. They've spent a lot of money already on purchasing the property. They've spent a lot of money already on the planning of the marketing, and they've spent a lot of money to hire this pro golfer to design this new back 9. But they get a letter in the mail, and that letter in the mail is from a California wildlife watchdog group. And they say, hold on. On that property is a habitat for the red-legged frog. Has anybody here ever heard of the red-legged frog? No? All right, well, I'm going to share my screen really quick, and I'm going to show you a couple things. All right, so this is the golf company that you are now working for, American Golf. You are in-house counsel, which is nice because you get a regular paycheck. Always a good thing, rather than working on contingencies. You have learned now that the red-legged frog has become very important to you. And so you might Google and you're like, what does this frog even look like? Well, this is the frog that we're working with. This is the actual California red-legged frog. Also, this red-legged frog is popularly known as the frog that Mark Twain made famous. It is a California jumping frog. It is a real county, the actual title of the Mark Twain book. It is in Northern California, and if you want to go, you can still participate in a frog jumping contest every year. Well, maybe not this year, but most years you can participate in a frog jumping contest. If you were to Google California red-legged frog, I want you to know that what you would have to sift through to try to find any legal items would be a lot. And so I would like you to go ahead. I'm going to stop my share. And we're going to be a little bit interactive because I want you to see how, as much as I love Google, I will pay for Google. When they come back and they say, now we're going to make you pay for, I'm going to pay. I give my money to Wikipedia every year when they do that little drive because I love Wikipedia too. However, we can't rely on it. So I want you to go ahead and do some Google searches. And I want you to think, I've told you the scenario. You're working on a golf course. You've now been told that the red-legged frog is bad for you. You want to do a little bit of free research out there before you jump on these databases. I want you to sort of see what kind of things you can find. Can you find case law? Can you find statutes? And can you find regulations? Or do you not really know what it is you're finding? So go ahead and take a couple minutes to actually pull up your browser and go look, because that's what we would do in class. We would now take a moment to step away and you would go and try something. So go ahead and try something.
The first thing that popped up on my computer was Amazon.
The first result I got was how to comply with requirements to protect California red-legged frog from pesticides from the EPA.
From the EPA, so the federal government. How many
Yes.
of you have found anything that is related to this California state government in terms of their rules and regulations? Oh, I see a couple. I see a couple hands.
I found a federal register with rules and regulations from the FWS, Fish and Wildlife Service.
Yep, the Federal Fish and Wildlife Service, or the California one. Or can you even tell?
I guess, no, I can't tell.
That's okay, that's okay.
Okay.
So I would be very disappointed if somebody went and did a search and through Google and was able to pull exactly what you needed to know in all its permutations, because actually there are a ton of questions that arise from a situation like this. There are, I gotta flip my notes over. So there's a ton of legal questions. One thing is we can get very focused on the red-legged frog. But in reality, what we might be looking for is something that's broader, something that is more about endangered species, something that is more attuned to the broader picture. And oftentimes when we're doing legal research, we're so focused on wanting to find something that perfectly matches our fact pattern that in legal research classes, we will spend time trying to get you to know when should you focus and when should you step back and think of the bigger picture. You might not even know what the red-legged frog is. So something like Wikipedia might not be the worst thing in the world for you. So let me pull up my screen for a second. And you might find going to the Wikipedia site just to find out what the red-legged frog does for free. Why pay a lot of money to a specialized database when you can get some of the basic information for free? You always want to verify, but now you have a little bit better, maybe it's called by other names sometimes. Maybe it was commonly referred to as something else. Maybe it fits into a bigger picture. And one of the things that Wikipedia does do well is they give you citations. So there's a whole section in the conservation area that does talk generally about the law surrounding the red-legged frog. Notice that in 2015, it was made the state's amphibian. once it is made California's state amphibian, and maybe you didn't even know we had a state amphibian, it creates a whole new set of laws. So just the sheer fact that if this had happened in 2011 versus 2015, you might have a whole new set of laws. So something like this, Wikipedia, with their footnotes, can give you some actual primary law starting points. So I don't want to dismiss it fully. What I want to say is you would never rely solely on the information you get from Wikipedia. You would always use it as a finding tool that then you could parlay that information into something better in a legal database to help you get factual primary law that you then would feel confident giving to a partner or a client. Many of you would have done a Google search, California red-legged frog law, case law. Case law is going to be one of your hardest things to get for free off the internet. There are no really good annotated versions of it, so you might get a court opinion, but it's just the court opinion. It doesn't give you all the bells and whistles that you would get from a paid database, nor will it connect you as easily to the other branches of government. But you might find that you get this. And one of the things that many of you found and that you were putting into the chat was the fact that you were pulling up government websites. Many of you talked about how you were pulling up the Fish and Game website, the agency websites for the federal government and the state government. And that is usually what will become the largest portion of your Google results at this point, that they will come up and give you that kind of information. All right, let's see here. And there's some things in the chat, so let me look there really quick and see if there's anything I need to say. It is a big class. I will say this, normally your classes in law school are much smaller. And so it is much easier to watch 24 students and to answer specific questions when they come in. That is one of the benefits of Southwestern and how they determine to teach legal writing and legal research is they are done in much smaller groups. So you have a lot more, because legal research lends itself to you asking questions, of you not being able to follow exactly what we've done. So you should know that normally we are able to stop and talk, and classes are usually between an hour and a half and 2 hours, because we do so much interactive where we put you into small groups, or we put you into breakout rooms, or we put you into projects, and then you go off and search on the databases. Today, I'm not having you search on the databases because you just don't have the passwords yet. And those systems won't allow me to give people passwords until you are an actual law student enrolled in school. So we do have a lot of databases. And one of those, our most important ones, we put here. So let me share my PowerPoint again. I took screenshots of some of those sites that I showed you, just in case the computer wasn't working. But this list right here that you see, these are all cases, statutes, federal cases, state cases, federal statutes, state statutes, federal regulations, state regulations, all having to do with one aspect of the red-legged frog. And if this looks like a foreign language to you, if this seems just letters and numbers, that's because it is. That is what we do when we train you and we teach you about legal research. This becomes codes that you know. When you look at this list, you might be able to pull out, well, that looks like a case or that looks like a statute. But we help you so that by the end of your time in law school, no matter what source you're given, you don't need a case name. A case name almost means nothing to us because there's going to be a lot of cases that have the word frog in them. What matters are these citations. And all these citations are just a fraction, a very small fraction of the cases and the statutes and the regulations that deal with the red-legged frog in California. So is anybody amazed by that? Is there? So does anybody want to try guessing? If you just want to unmute yourself, can anybody tell me which one of these would be a federal statute?
A5 FR.
So you're close. You're in the federal government, but you're actually in the executive branch. You're in the Federal Register, which is one of the agencies. So it's a regulation, but you're very close because you picked out the federal. The statutes come from the legislative branch, but does anybody have an idea of what one is?
No, I would go with the 16 USCA.
Oh,
CFR.
16.
73 F3D.
Yep,
867.
16 USCA is a statute. That is a federal statute. This one up here, California Government Code, that is a state statute. And then this with chapters and public laws, they are the chronological listing of what will become those statutes. So some of the things that I put into this list are actually the same material, just in a different format. And those are the kinds of things that we try to teach you when you're in legal research, because that becomes very confusing. It becomes one of the hard things that students come in my office all the time, because they're used to seeing one kind of citation and all of a sudden they have a different citation and they don't know what it means. And by the end of your time, you usually know what some of it means. All right, so 2 people have their hands raised. Let's see if I can see where they are. It makes my little thing so small. Tahana?
Hi, Tatiana.
Tatiana.
The J is just in there to mess people up. My mom was creative. But anyways, I was thinking in the left column, either 377F and then SUP or 73F3D.
So those are cases. So everything that you see in the left column are actual case citations from different sources. So yes, the F-SUP one and the F3D are the federal case law. So you're right about that. They're the federal case law. And then the ones that have Cal App and Cal Reporter are state stat law that I can tell right away from looking at the code. However, things like the ones that have the Westlaw number or the Lexis number, those are much more difficult to determine just from the statute or from the citation. Normally you'll have to go and look up that case to find out what it is. So good job at figuring out the federal from the state. And sometimes it's really hard to tell. It's sometimes they don't always put an F, like the ELR, that's a specialized reporter that just does cases that deal with environmental issues. And so each thing has its own special, but yes, the F1s and the F-SUP, those are federal cases. So good job. Let's see, there was one other person. Gotta make my list big again. I believe it's Joel.
Yeah, it's the 50 CFR, is that Code of Federal Regulations? Is that another
Yes.
one?
So that would be another regulation. So I'll go through them really quick so you can see. This whole left side is nothing but case law. Then we have legislative statutes up until the 102 stat. Those are all statutes that fall either in the federal government or the state government, and they are from the legislative branch. And then 50 CFR down to the California Register one, those 4 citations, those are all administrative law citations that come under the executive branch, which are the agency law. And truthfully, I love agency law. Like, it's one of my favorite things in all the world. I don't think enough people learn about agencies, and they really run our lives. They are the ones that tell restaurants exactly what they have to do in terms of cleanliness. They are the ones that tell the airplane manufacturers exactly how many bolts per wing. They're the FAA. And they're the ones that anybody in America can write in comments to and say, I don't think you should do this. I think you should do that. And it's such an amazing process, but it's so many pages of law. I won't go into my rabbit hole of administrative law. You'll have to come to one of my classes to get that. But the federal government does over 80,000 pages a year of agency regulations. And so they really do become a huge portion of telling people what they can and cannot do. They just had one up where it was about support animals in airplanes and whether or not emotional support animals should be allowed onto airplanes as service animals rather than just animals. And they should limit service animals to animals that have been trained for the blind, for certain physical kind of help. And anybody in the world, and there was about 16,000 people that wrote in their opinion on whether or not animals should be considered service animals on an airplane, or if they should be considered pets if they were emotional support animals. So it's America at work to figure out how the law, and then there's going to be a ton of lawyers that take that new regulation, whatever it ends up being, and starts suing or representing different people that now feel that they have been wronged or feel that the airlines have wronged them. And it's going to create this whole system until maybe the legislative branch will pick up and make the legislative laws more specific to give it a little more heft. So isn't that exciting? I mean, isn't that fun? That's the chess game. So, but I only have, oh, I'm so out of time. I want to show you some of these databases that we use and why they're better than Google, why we spend so much time training you on these databases and these different sources. So let me share my screen, and I'm gonna go to, where's my internet? There it is. So in the world of legal databases, there are many specialized ones. There are ones that deal specifically with tax. There are ones that deal specifically with securities. And as you get into the realm of law that you are going to focus on, then we can start teaching you about those specific databases. But the two that you've probably heard the most about are Lexis and Westlaw. Now, in California, we really like CEB. CEB is a California-based legal research. And so I actually love CEB because it focuses you right away into California law. But Westlaw and Lexis are the two big daddies when it comes to legal research. They are also going to be your most expensive. So you will often find that a firm or a corporation will only buy one or the other. Now, interestingly, they are not the same. Even though much of their primary law is identical. They have their own editors, they have their own situations, and they come up with different results. So we're just going to do a very simple search for red-legged frog. And we're going to keep the jurisdiction open. I'm not going to limit it to California yet, because I just want you to see how many results we get. When I just search for red-legged frog, I get over 10,000 statutes and legislation. I get over almost 5,000 cases. I get over 5,000 administrative materials. That is a lot of stuff to sift through to try to find the good stuff. So it's almost as bad as Google in that sense that you might be overwhelmed by what you're seeing. However, there are many ways to narrow that down to your specific need and to get it down. One of the things we recommend is starting with secondary materials to read up on somebody who's already an expert on golf courses, or already an expert on endangered habitats or endangered species, and that might help you. But interestingly enough, I'm going to take the same red-legged frog, search terms, I'm going to keep it as all state and all federal, just like I did with Lexis, and I'm going to use Westlaw, and you're going to see a dramatic shift in how many things come up. Instead of having almost 5,000 cases, now you have 76. Instead of having 10,000 statutes and legislative materials, you now have 50. That's because of many different reasons. One is that there are two different companies, and the way that they have their algorithms set and the way that they search for different things makes their responses different. The other big difference is red-legged frog might be used in Westlaw, which it is, as an and. Every document must contain the words red-legged and frog. Whereas in Westlaw, they default to an or, where it can contain the word red-legged, it can contain the word frog, or it can contain a mix of red-legged frog. And that gives you a lot more options. So just knowing that small thing about these databases of one defaulting to an and or one defaulting to an or makes a difference. Now I could do a multitude of other things. I could put things in quotation marks and tell the systems that you must search for it as a phrase. And I mentioned
she's lost so many people.
Oh, so it's just, yeah, databases are difficult, and that's why we spend so much time on them. That's why we take hours teaching you how to do mock questions, mock things. We do many, many searches, and that's why, frankly, they won't give us passwords for people that aren't enrolled, because they're too powerful to utilize. But they do have everything that you need. They'll give you case law, they'll give you statutes, they'll give you legislative materials, and all those things a lawyer works with to make sure that they know the law. Very seldom do you just have a statute that tells you you can do this. And one of those statutes is what happens when a red-legged frog dies. So let us look for a jumping frog. And one of the statutes that will come up was made in 1957, and it's still good law. So law is not something that dies if it's 10 years old. Law is something that is here all the time. And there is a law in California that says you may not eat a jumping frog if it dies. You cannot sell it for food. And that's a law that's still on the books. That's a law that was from 1957 and has never been changed. And that is just an example of sometimes there is a law that is very distinctive and says you can or you cannot do this. So legal research is very important. It's one of those things that you may think it's easy or it's all in one case, but in reality, it's moving from a case to a statute to administrative law and seeing how they all work together to tell you what you need to tell your client. And that's why you spend 3 years in law school, because you're trying to learn all of that. All right, I'll stop sharing the screen. And do you have questions? Or nobody here is probably going to have to work in a golf course and deal with a red-legged frog in the next 5 years, but it just goes to show you that at first you probably thought I was having a very small question. What happens when the golf course is told? And in reality, it turns out to be a big question. And it becomes such a big question that you might go back to the seller of the property and say, you should have told us. And so therefore the sale is null and void because we can't utilize the property anymore. And that was a restriction that you should have told us. All right, Thomas has a question.
Hi, a quick question. I'm trying to write down the clarification between, or the differences between Lexis law or advanced versus Westlaw. Which one's more specific?
So they vary when you ask. So Westlaw actually, in this case, is opposite of what it normally does. Westlaw usually gives you the most, and Lexis gives you the best from their editors. But in this particular case, one defaults to or and one defaults to and. But it's not necessarily that rule that you need to know. What you need to know is that it does default, because they might change it in 5 years. We try not to teach you click here and click there, because they're always revamping their databases. So what's more important is that if you do searches on both systems, you think to yourself, why were the results so different, and what does that do to my research? Not necessarily just taking a blind look at it, but utilizing that something's different. So what is the difference? But we do go through we spend hours on Westlaw and Lexis just so you can, and they offer their own trainings off class time, just so you can really get a feel of how those systems work. Nobody can learn that system in the 2 minutes that I showed it to you. Nobody.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep.
Maggie, we had a question in the chat room from Ron Dobb,
Okay.
asking, what is your opinion regarding case text?
Case text. All right, case text is, my personal opinion is it's not ready yet. It is a free, or it's actually a paid system now. They began it to try to be a free case system like a Westlaw or a Lexis. Until they hire really good attorneys to annotate their cases, and they depend on crowdsourcing to do it, I'm going to treat it like a Wikipedia. If I rely on the general public to do something, I am not going to rely on it. I want to be able to rely on it because I know that people have been through a vetting process when they are doing it. So case text, while an excellent, again, like a Wikipedia, a starting point and something that you can start with, isn't up to a standard that I would recommend it to the general public yet. All right. Minan? Cohen?
Yeah, Maimon.
Myron, okay.
Okay, so my question is, if a case has a red flag, in regard to Westlaw, if a case has a red flag, can you still use it if that particular matter is not the one that's being overruled?
Yes. So have you already taken some kind of law class? Because that's usually
No,
one
so
of our...
I've been working in a law firm in mass tort litigation.
Okay, so yes, what you're saying is 100% true. They put up these stop signs or red flags to tell you that something is no longer good law, and it's a helpful thing to you. However, many cases deal with multiple issues. So it might be a murder, kidnapping, and drug charges in that case, and the drug stuff is now no longer good law in that case, but the murder and kidnapping law is still good law. So we always teach you, we spend a whole class on just teaching you that if you get a red flag or a red stop sign, it's not you're throwing it out. Again, you have to use your human brain to utilize the helpful resources that the systems are giving you to determine whether or not that case is still good for your issue. So, yep.
Thank you.
That was a little advanced. All right, Stephanie?
Hi, yes. My question is, do we have access to all of these databases as soon as we start law school, or is it based on certain classes that we have access to certain databases?
Nope. Once you're admitted, you get, within a very short time, like within the first week, you get the registration codes for the 4 major password protected databases: CEB, Bloomberg, Lexis, and Westlaw. They will ask you for your graduation date because they will take that access away from you as soon as you graduate, or you leave law school, or you transfer to another school. Anytime you do anything that takes you away from Southwestern, they would then cut access off for you. So there was a time back when I was in law school, they just gave us the passwords for the whole time we were in school, and we could use them when we were at the firms in the summer, and we could do other things. But they found that firms were actually hiring students just to get that free sort of password. But yes, as soon as you start, you get access to them, and we try to get you to logged into all 4 systems right off the bat. Even though we do primary in your first year, use Lexis and Westlaw, when you progress into upper level classes, that's when we really start showing you all those other databases.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
There was a question in the chat room, if we have a preference or if the schools have a preference, do firms have a preference? How do people choose what to
between Westlaw and Lexis?
Yeah.
We all do have a preference. It is a Coke, Pepsi kind of thing. And you will find that individuals really do start to love one more than the other, and they will gravitate towards that one. We try very hard to make sure that you learn Westlaw and Lexis, because it is true that different companies, different firms will pick one over the other. And sometimes they do it for very odd reasons. Maybe a partner loves Coke and he only wants Coke sold at his firm because that's what he likes. Or sometimes it's money. And sometimes it depends on what kind of law you do, that maybe CEV is the best economical option for you and gives you most of what you need. In terms of what gets used most at Southwestern, I would say Lexis is the preferred by a lot of people. In terms of what is used most often out in the world, I think West is still the granddaddy because they are the publishers of the actual reporters. And so you get slightly different bells and whistles from looking up case law and Westlaw. Every librarian, every faculty member will default to one or the, they will have a favorite. It will be a Coke or Pepsi preference. And so, but it does vary. But out in the real world, it comes down to a lot of times the money, what can they get for their particular practice area that they need for how much money. There's not a Laura, a Vasher, a Lamra. Lamira.
Hi. Just wondering, I was a public administrator, and so we used LexisNexis, but it was mostly, from my memory, we mostly did like a people search. So when you purchase access to LexisNexis, is it like, does it depend on what area that you're working? Like lawyers would get the case law, and at the Public Guardian, it was the office, we would just get access to search for people? Or how does that work?
So each system offers an academic access and then a paid access. So they're almost like drug dealers. They're giving the academics a lower discounted rate so that we can make you addicted and you will have to use them. But there are certain things they won't give students access to. One of those things is public records, because they find that students utilize the public records not for study, but to stalk somebody or to hunt somebody down. So they have actually very heavily restricted student access to any kind of people search. And that is one of their bigger high-end money makers out in the real world, to pull those kinds of people search or background checks or those kinds of things. So yes, when they're out in the real world, they have different packages, almost like a cable company, where you can buy different levels of different information.
But pretty much if you've used it before, you know how to, it's the same basically, or is it that much different?
It is different when you're searching for the case law and the law versus just a person. But there's going to be there's going to be enough similarity that you would probably, my guess would be, when it came to your preference of jumping on Westlaw first or jumping on Lexis first, you would jump on Lexis first because you would already feel slightly more comfortable with their platform.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Looks like Myman has his hand up.
Oh, yep. Go ahead.
Okay, so another kind of, I guess, more of an advanced question, but this is kind of a working question, like while working in a firm. So in my experience, I've noticed that the attorneys, they want their legal research like in the body of the email, and some of them want it in like in other ways. So I was wondering if there's a specific format for presenting research.
There isn't. It really depends on who you're giving it to. When we train interns or externs about how they're going to prepare their memo, some people they want it to be very concise and almost bullet pointed. They don't want full summaries of a case. They just want the case citation and a little blurb about what it is and how it works. Others really want you to delve into the issue, synthesize it, and then almost write a paper back to them that's synthesizing the information with more of a citation list at the end. So it really depends on what kind of question you're being asked and who the person is that's getting it.
Okay.
And your legal writing class does teach you those kinds of things. And when you do your externships, some judges want it one way, some judges want it a different way. So it really is more about how can you make sure that you're getting the correct information and that you have the actual good picture so that you can impart the correct information to the person asking the question.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Another question in the chat.
Oh, okay, the chat
question. Oh.
You can go with Cuthbert and then we'll go to the chat question.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
People can. Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a very easy question. I'm just wondering, like how are students graded? Are they graded like? I mean, are they like graded and evaluated on like a weekly basis, or with the with the Southwestern legal writing and analysis? Is there like a final project, say at the end of the year or at the end of the semester?
They do legal research and legal writing. In the advanced classes, they are more where you have multiple projects that are due at multiple times, and each one will be weighted differently. So they try to grow you as you're going through the semester, making it longer or tougher. And so there isn't sort of like other classes, the doctrinal classes, they might have one big midterm and one big final. But the writing and the legal research classes, we are more of a progressive kind of situation where we're trying to get you to grow with each assignment. But it's not necessarily in every week, but it's also not just too big or one big final at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. How about the chat question?
Yeah, someone is asking, Maria's asking, how do you start or exercise your legal research muscle? What can we start doing now to get better at it? Is there any type of certifications that people can get?
Really, when you start law school and you get those passwords, that's really the best time to start it. And Westlaw and Lexis will both try to entice you into their classes with t-shirts and water bottles and other things. But in the reality, learning how to use those systems effectively and cost effectively is very important. So that's more important. And I would say just for fun, as you're doing things, as you're going through your daily life, think about if somebody came in and had that question for me, how would I research it? I do that all the time. That's how I come up with a lot of my scenarios. I will call my friends and I'll say, what are you researching this week? Or I will just see something. You know, I will see somebody refusing to go into Costco wearing a mask and being upset about it. And I think, can they sue Costco? Can Costco sue them? Does anybody care that for years there was a sign that said no shirt, no shoes, no service? Would this fall into that same realm? What kind of, and I might just start looking for news articles or other things. And now that I know what citations look like, or when they talk about case law or administrative law, that's when I would start to see, oh, that's how the different branches mix together. We have mayor's orders and we have governor's orders and we have this and we have that. And how does it all mix together? But I don't think you really need to do too much before we start teaching you, because we do start you thinking that you are starting from the beginning, that you're coming from a history degree background and you've never had to do anything like this before, and we're going to guide you through it. So any other questions?
Another question from the chat. Is there any type of law firm or law field that does not need to use any of these legal research platforms?
I don't think today there is. Because of a system called Citations and the updating of case law, which you used to be able to do in paper if you really had to, and you no longer can do that, you really do need some kind of database. However, we show you Westlaw and Lexis, because if you can master them, then any of the lower cost services like a Versus Law or a Lois Law or a CV or a Bloomberg or something like that, the skills are transferable. So if you understand how to do it on these very sophisticated systems, you can, as an attorney, buy some smaller systems. Or you can, say you're a solo practitioner, you might spend money on CEB because it gives you 90% of what you need, and then you buy the lowest tier, the basic cable version of Lexis or Westlaw to just supplement what you can't finish off in CEB. So I don't believe that you could practice law today with 0 databases. You would be sued for malpractice if you relied solely on what you found through Google. But I think if you become a very good researcher, you can start to utilize free government resources in conjunction with a lower cost database, in conjunction with the basic minimum of what you can get on Westlaw and Lexis. And our alums, one of the things our library provides to alums of Southwestern is we have 2 terminals in the library that are Westlaw. So anybody that has ever graduated from our school, if they don't want to buy Westlaw because they only need it once every 4 months or once every 6 months, they can just come into the library and use it as much as they want. So that is one of the services. And same with LA County. If you buy a membership to LA County Law Library, they offer Lexis or Westlaw, so that if you only are using it once in a blue moon because you have got your practice and you know your area of law and you're a particular family law attorney that you know what's going on, or you deal with a particular agency and their website gives you enough, then you can always find ways. But I don't think you could actually be a really good practicing attorney. You couldn't do it without some use of some of these databases. Another question?
From the chat. What are some common mistakes law students make while doing research?
Treating those systems like Google. Thinking that the first 5 results are the winners. That all they have to do is put in their keyword and the first 5 things that pop up are the best thing for their situation. These systems are not Google. You are not looking for that one company website so that you can buy the face wash that you want. They are very sophisticated, and your clients' questions are very nuanced in reality. So that is one of the biggest pitfalls, that they think it's Google. And just remember, if the databases were that good, if you could just jump on the database, put in one term and pull up the right answer, why do they need to hire you? Because they would just buy Westlaw. They would just buy Lexis and do that themselves. So it is not Google. So that's one of the big mistakes. The second big mistake is not actually reading things, just skimming or control find for the word you think is important. These opinions and case books and secondary sources were made for you to read them. So if you hate reading, law is not the best thing for you, because you are joining a profession of readers, not skimmers. You are going to reread cases multiple times, and based on what other things you've read, you're going to see different things in that case on the second and third reading. So you are going to read a lot. You are going to read all the time, and you're going to read things multiple times to figure things out. So that's the two things. Skimming and treating Westlaw or Lexis like Google are the two biggest hills we have to get you over. All right. Is there another one?
Yeah, there's another one. And then after this, I think we should probably give it another, 10 minutes, and then we'll start closing out.
Is it the looking at the academic calendar?
No, it's if your search yields thousands of results, how do you go about sifting through them?
Oh, so what I didn't get a chance to show you, because it really delves too deep into using those databases, is they have what are called pre-filters and post-filters. So you are able to, before you put in your search terms, narrow it down somewhat by jurisdiction or other items. But also when you're done and you get that result of thousands of hits, you're able to use this entire post-filtering process to start knocking out ones that don't help you. So it's as if you're casting a wide net into the ocean and you're pulling in this huge amount and you only want the tuna. And you start using those post filters to get rid of all the fish that you don't want until you just have, 17 really good cases that you want to look at, or 2 statutes that really expose the issue. And that's how you do it. Most of it is done by post filtering. So you throw a wide net and then you start post filtering it down. That's different than what it was 10, 15 years ago. 10, 15 years ago, you made a very important nuanced search query because they charged you for hitting the enter key. And they have now tried to make it more Google-like, but in trying to make it more Google-like, sometimes you get those large number hits and you have to narrow it down. So that's how that works. Oh, and somebody just said, does Lexis and Nexus charge you per search? They used to charge you per search. That used to be how, and it was very expensive. And they used to charge you per minute. Now they don't do it that way. What they do is they charge you per document that you open, which in some cases can get very expensive because they do, the document isn't the book. The document is one page in that book. So we try to teach you cost-effective ways because in law school, it feels free to you, but in real life, it's more expensive. So we do try to teach you all those kinds of things because it is now when you click on a document. Was there, let's see, any other questions? Let me see if I missed one really quick.
Doesn't look like it. I have a question for you.
Yes.
How or when should students expect to start using these skills and start really diving into research?
So we start you right away in your first semester. We start you off with baby steps. Your first assignment is more of what's called a closed universe, where you're handed certain cases to read and to get to know. Then the next one is you're researching, but we're giving you a lot of wink, wink, hint, hints and guiding you to very good cases, very good statutes. And each time you grow and it's more of on your own. So you start learning right away. I would say though, my favorite time to teach you is actually when you're in your 3rd year and you take some kind of advanced legal research class, because frankly, you have suffered somewhat during the summer externships. You have done something where you've been told that was wrong. You've done something where you spent hours searching for it and I find it in 2 minutes and you're like, oh, I had no idea there was an actual book that said exactly what I needed. And when I say book, I mean a book online. And so those kind of light bulb moments work better when you frankly have suffered somehow earlier in your years of law school, because then you're open to it and you say, that would have saved me a lot of time, or that is exactly what I needed. And then I have you hooked. And I love my advanced class because it usually is your 3rd year or your 4th year if you're an evening student, and you're about ready to go into the type of law that you want to practice. So you know more about, I want to be a public defender, or I want to be a tax attorney, or I want to be this. And so you're really focused on what are the materials that I need for that area of law that I'm going into. is there a difference in the academic calendar? Yes. So the first week you get sort of an overview of everything, and it's a nice little, make sure everybody's on a little level playing field. And then the real curriculum happens with grades and all those kinds of things. Let's see.
I think we can do 2 last questions. Is that okay?
Yep.
What are some exciting advancements in legal researching that you can share with us? Or exciting, yeah.
They are always looking to make things better on the major database systems. When Bloomberg came into the picture, they changed the pricing structure for everybody because they decided to charge $500 per month per attorney, so you could budget it much better. And that was they really changed. That's when Westlaw and Lexis had to stop doing per minute charges and per hitting the enter key. There's a thing called Ravel Law that was started in Stanford that was then purchased by Lexis so that it would show connections between cases and statutes that might not use the same words, but that the attorneys felt this is the same topic, this is the same idea. And so it's a graphical kind of system that uses lines and bubbles. And so there's always somebody trying to make, and I have to say that within the next 10 years, somebody will make a good free case version so that normal people that don't hire a lawyer will be able to access some real legal research. I think in the next 10 years, somebody will invent something that can be free that isn't necessarily crowdsourced, and it's going to be a big game changer.
I think there was one. Let's see.
Is there one more?
With that said, are they creating programs to use with like Alexa or Siri, like voice activated searches?
I'm sure they are. I'm 100% sure they are. But everything that they do on those systems, it is never going to be good enough for somebody not to rely on the attorney's human brain to put things together. Because once those systems or those AI systems are good enough that they don't need lawyers, then that's all that people will buy. So I think they're going to try desperately, like right away, as soon as iPads came up and as soon as attorneys started using the databases in the courthouse so that they could pull up some kind of information quickly in the courthouse, they modified their platform so that it would be useful on tablets, that it would be useful on different, so they are definitely going to do whatever makes them money.
All right.
Any other
Last question.
Okay.
Are writing memos included in this class of legal research and writing?
Yes, so they will have you write memos and bench briefs, and they will move you through those kinds of legal things. And usually we work in conjunction so that our legal research class helps you research the topic that you then will be writing on for your writing professor. So you will then have certain cases, and then they will teach you how to structure with an IRAC, how to structure your writing so that you can convey the analysis that you've done as best as you can.
Okay, so I think that is all the questions for today.
Just so you know, I'm on the website. I don't think, did you give them my email? It's out there on the website. I'm right on the library website. So if you do have other questions, you can feel free to email me. We can Zoom one-on-one. I'm fine with that. I won't do any legal research for you, but I will happily talk as long as the day is long about different things about legal research, because it is one of the things that separates somebody from being sued for malpractice to being an excellent attorney. So it is one of those things that, especially in your beginning career, you are always asked to legal research because you just don't know everything. You just don't know. Even if you want to be a family law attorney and you take the family law class, you haven't researched all the move away issues and all the different domestic violence issues and things like that. So you're going to be, your first 5 years is nothing but legal research. Well, thanks for hanging on so long. I'm sorry I kept you so far over.
If you all have any questions about the admissions cycle, admissions questions, feel free to give us a call. or send us an email. We're here to help you all. I know it's a stressful process right now with everything going on, but just know that you have our support. We'll be having events throughout this cycle, even more events, and you can find those on our website as well. Or you can email us and we'll provide you with the information. But that's all for now.
I'll have you know, I loved law school. It's a fabulous time. It really is. It's a wonderful 2, 3, 4 years. It really is.